Margot Lascon, and I too want to thank you and your officials for selecting my topic here tonight. It's raining cats and dogs, as we know, and we had huge rainfall last Sunday night week in lots of parts of the country, but we had it in Tipperary, Tipperary, especially Thurles town was badly affected, and indeed the Clare, Cashel and Tipperary, Clare, Cashel, MD. And it just was unprecedented kind of rainfall, but the lack of maintenance, Minister, that's going on in roads, you know, with the cuts to personnel, and indeed I have to single out the TIA or NRA, who developed 5 motorways through Tipperary, and we see them regularly doing maintenance with road markings and whatever else and hedge cutting, but I'm told by people adjoining landowners that they don't do any maintenance on the drainage. And I'm talking about the drainage now that sometimes it's cut out and sometimes there's a high, the road is high. And, you know, they went through land and they cut through rivers and streams. And I pointed out at the time, in many cases they put in small culverts, a number of small culverts rather than one eye of a bridge. And they're all getting blocked with debris from the forestry and everything else, natural debris. And the damage being done to people's homes, property. I have a case tonight of a farmer whose part of his farm was washed away by a torrent coming down from the Galtee Mountains in the parish of Bellaluby. And we must have respect for the landowners and property owners. And Minister, the cost of projects this year has gone spiralling upwards in the council, so their maintenance budget is exhausted, much earlier than any other year because of the increased costs. Yeah, no, I'm not, Minister. No, there was a mistake. Let's not go on that. No, I'm on flooding. Oh, that's okay. There was a mistake earlier. That's good. Sorry. Sorry. No, thank you. There was a misprint. So the cost of projects has massively increased because of the cost of fuel and oil-based products, and which bitumen and tar and everything else. So Tipperary County Council are in a perilous situation because they've exhausted most of their road budgets and maintenance budgets, and now they're faced with a bill of probably up to 500, $500,000, which I understand from the Director of Services to my daughter today, Councillor Mattie McGrath, that a letter will be arriving in the department imminently, and from James Swords, senior engineer, and indeed Paul Fell, engineers, that kind of money will be needed to repair the damages done. But the big problem is lack of maintenance. Lack of maintenance and lack of accountability, because, you know, when that motorway was driven to, not driven to, but when CPO and everything else was developed and we avail of it, but there must be, you just can't build a project and walk away from it. We must go up into the upper echelons of it and check the drainage and maintain it. It's not just the motorway and the access. We have to have access for fencing and everything else, but for prevent animals coming on, but it's a serious situation. So the funding bill will be coming in here, and unsuspecting motorists then driving the motorway with torrents of rain crossing it because it's lack of drainage. It's a dangerous situation, extremely dangerous, and many people have been seriously injured and worse on the motorway, and the same with the motorway Limerick to Port Leash. So, like, we spent so much money on the motorways, but we must maintain the curtilage and the percolation areas around them and drainage areas, and above all we must protect life and limb, but protect properties of farmers and householders and farmyards, and above all households. So, and the council staff and the GSSs went out, and I said it here one day that one of them had suffered a minor heart attack while out on duty that night, and he's recovered. Walter Doherty spoke to money on Sunday. Thanks be to God, he's fine. But the council workers go out and everybody else to try and sort it out, fire brigades, everything else. We shouldn't be putting these people in this kind of danger if proper maintenance and proper service of the projects was taking place.
Thank you, Lascon Curler. Thank you, Deputy McGrath. The improvement and maintenance of regional and local roads is the statutory responsibility of the relevant local authority in accordance with the provisions of Section 13 of the Roads Act 1993. Work on these roads are funded from Council's own resources, supplemented by state road grants. I understand, and I know from the Deputy's contribution this evening, there was an intense rainfall event in County Tipperary over a short period of time, and I'm aware that flooding affected properties over quite an area. Unfortunately, these severe weather events are becoming more frequent, and they do highlight the need to focus on the measures needed to address climate change. As regards the impact on regional and local roads, I can confirm that Tipperary County Council have made initial contact with the Department. It is understood, and I've picked it up from from Deputy McGrath through Councillor McGrath, that the Council will be making a submission to the Department seeking funding to assist with repair works caused by the severe weather event. In relation to funding options for repair works, it is established practice that local authorities are advised by the Department that a contingency provision should be reserved from the overall resources available to each local authority for regional and local roads so as to deal with damage caused by severe weather conditions. As regards the Department's grants, local authority may carry out repairs from the regional and local road grants available to them and from their own resources. And in this context, it's open to each council to determine and reprioritise its work programme following severe weather events. Where that is not feasible, such as in this case, I gather from Councillor McGrath or from Deputy McGrath, the Department always tries to work with local authorities to facilitate the management of repair works in these situations. Once a submission is received from Tipperary County Council, which identifies the works required together with an estimate of the costs, it will be reviewed by Department officials, and the Department will liaise further with Tipperary Coco in relation to the necessary repair works and the timing of the works. In the event that national roads are affected in the manner described by the Deputy, Transport Infrastructure Ireland has stated that it is necessary to carry out a survey and hydrological assessment of the culverts and drains in the affected area to understand the cause behind the flooding and to quantify the details and costs of any works to be completed.
And we're all tired, but this is Bangladesh, because they did the studies, they did the hydrological studies and everything else, and they didn't put in big enough culverts. And we argued, and farmers and people who knew the area and the topography of the area knew, and they wouldn't listen. So now we have a problem is they won't do maintenance. They can't just as a developer project. You can't build your house and forget to clean the chutes. And this folly, every time we ask a question about flooding, about climate change, it just doesn't cut it for me, because it's climate change, yeah, we're not climate change deniers, but rivers won't be cleaned, gullies aren't being cleaned, streams aren't being cleaned. So what happens? Every dirt that runs off of this building ends up in a river, and then every other building and field and agriculture and everything else, and roadways. So unless we start not forgetting climate change, but deal with clean the basins of the rivers, but above all maintenance in this case of the motorways. And it makes me very angry to listen to this blame climate change. We can get downpours of rain, yes, but if the gullies and culverts are cleaned and maintained, it will take 90% of it. There might be 10% overflow. But you see farmyards washed in because of the torrent, and that same place was flooded 20 years ago during the development of the motorway, or before it was developed. So there are issues. TI, NRA before them are not maintaining, are looking after the curtilage of the projects. But in ordinary roads then, the county council workers aren't on the ground, we all know that. Maintenance is not being done. And the hard-pressed taxpayers, ratepayers, you name it, are being discommoded, being destroyed in their businesses and their homes. Tullestown, there were numerous houses and businesses flooded. They won't get insurance because it's a recurring event. And it's mainly because of blocked gullies and inverts, and that's basic maintenance, and it's not being done. So we have bills now going, and then you said to go back to the existing budget. They can't in November, 1st of November, go back to the budget. It's spent in normal years, but this year, especially because of the high costs of the increased costs of the materials, the budget is completely expended. So they need a dig out from the department. But above all, we need to revisit this and do maintenance, not fire brigade work afterwards.
Thank you.
Look, I appreciate the Deputy's concerns. I know that you raised the issue with the Taoiseach earlier today about the damage to property. You cannot, I know you say you're not denying climate change, but you also cannot deny the severity and the strength of weather events has completely changed over the last number of years. They've become much more frequent and much more severe. And it's not just a case of a simple solution of draining drains. I will convey the points that are being made to Minister Ryan and to Minister Naughton and draw his attention to the letter that has been submitted from Tipperary County Council to his department. And as I said, I will copy the Minister with your remarks this evening.